back everybody, it's the Night Sky Prince again. Final Fantasy 15 has probably been through more story rewrites than any game ever, with rewrites allegedly happening every 6 months leading up to the game's release. In the end, so much of the promised content from the trailers didn't even end up in the game in any form at all. Phrases such as eyes that see the light of expiring souls or a meeting predestined by the divine make no sense at all. There's honestly so many cuts to Final Fantasy 15's story that I literally couldn't list them all. So I had to narrow it down to the 10 most devastating cuts to the story, things that I think when absent or altered do a great disservice to the game's plot. Some of these may be addressed or resurfaced in DLC or patches, but honestly, the things that I picked are things that I feel like should have been in the game from the very start. And while I honestly love the game that we got, there sure were a lot of disappointments for the people who've been keeping up with it all these years. Before we begin to drop this list on you, definitely hit that subscribe button for everything here and even more Final Fantasy coverage to come. And be sure to watch to the very end for 2 special bonus cut content pieces, which bothered the living hell out of me, but I'm not sure if it bothered anyone else. But I was livid when Square Enix decided to remove these things. But without any further delay, let's get started on our list.
Number 1. The removal of Reaper worship.
Among all the things, this change seems to be why Final Fantasy 15 saw most of its rewrites. Versus 13 was a game centered around ghosts and death. Originally, Lucius worshipped Etro, the goddess of death. However, it's considered adults-only content in some countries around the world. In some countries, Reaper worship would be considered illegal. Due to the fact that Final Fantasy 15 was planned for a worldwide release, the core theme of the game had to be completely rewritten. Etro, the goddess of death, became Eos, the goddess of the dawn, and it's literally the most poorly done plot change ever, as everything in the entire plot still links to the original themes, such as the fact that Armiger is really just ghost swords of your dead relatives, there's still skulls all over the Lucian clothing, the royal color of Lucius is black, the ring of the Lucii and the crystal both demand blood sacrifices to use their full power. Nyx can literally hear his dead sister when he warp strikes because warp striking is literally passing through the realm of the dead and ending up on the other side. This fundamental change is the basis for most of the things on this list.
Number 2. The invasion of Insomnia.
Let's face it, whether you loved Kingsglaive or not, I think it's safe to say that removing the Niflheim invasion was a terrible decision. In older trailers of Versus 13 and 15, we saw Noctus in Insomnia. These original opening scenes where you got to see Noctus being a burdened prince, wearing his royal clothes, attending signing ceremonies, this would have been a great level of intimacy with Noctus's character. The equivalent of removing the Insomnia invasion in favor of Kingsglaive would be the same as removing Final Fantasy X's opening. Instead of seeing the introduction where Tidus is a star Blitzball player, it would just plop you on the map and you'd have to watch Blitzball Glaive first in order to understand Tidus's role as a star player. Not only would the invasion of Insomnia have been a beautiful and grand way to set the tone and give insight into the world, it would have been by far one of the most memorable Final Fantasy openings in history, which is really saying something.
Number 3. Stella.
The justification for why you can't prefer Stella over Luna is that we never got to really know Stella. This is quite a bad argument as we never got to really know Lunafreya either. Luna's lack of appearance in the game, your total inability to romance her in any way, and her sudden death made her nothing more than a tease for fans, especially fans who have been so curious about this character in her various forms for over a decade. Stella was just more conceptually interesting. Rumored to be dead from the start of the game, a ghost that only Noctis could see would find herself being entirely cut from the game alongside Etro. Everything from her clothing design, to her more interesting aesthetic, to the fact that her and Noctis had this Romeo and Juliet style of romance which led to them fighting. In the end, it feels like we didn't get Luna or Stella, but just empty promises of both.
Number 4. The Void Crystal.
Final Fantasy Versus 13 originally intended to be a throwback to old school Final Fantasy games, with 4 nations of Lucius, Niflheim, Accordo, and Tenebrae all having their own crystals, with Niflheim having already acquired 3 out of 4 of these crystals at the start of the game. Yet somehow it was cut down to 1 crystal. Originally, Lucius's crystal came from the Fabula Nova Crystallis goddess, Etro. When Etro became Eos, however, the Void Crystal became a crystal of light. However, remnants of the crystal being a Void Crystal are still incredibly obvious. For example, Fake News Aranea says that demons would be afraid of the crystal. A crystal of light, right? But they aren't. Also, how many crystals of light do you know demand a blood sacrifice? The Ring of the Lucii grants its power to the person wearing the ring, and uses high-level black magic such as death. Really? A crystal of light giving you an ability such as death. Does that make any sense? At all. Whatsoever.
Number 5. The logo.
Again with the Reaper worship cuts, the figure originally seen in the logo was most likely Etro, or at the very least was definitely not Luna, as she didn't come into the picture until at least 7 years after the logo was already designed. The logo you see at the end of the game is nice, but ultimately has little or nothing to do with the original's plot. They simply chose not to redesign it because, let's be honest, it's iconic.
Number 6. Ravis's villain buildup.
To be honest, this is one of the hardest things to forgive because everyone was set up for Ravis and Noctus to have an epic fight in the retail version of the game's script. It's a fight that fans have been desperately wanting since the very beginning of the Versus 13 days. Kingsglaive went and hyped Ravis's character up even more, making him look completely menacing, and also added an interesting element of him not approving of Noctus's and Luna's relationship. However, instead of getting this, we simply got blueballed, with a random change of heart, followed by him dying a death that we didn't see until after release, and only getting to fight a demon version of him. It's just a tragedy.
Number 7. All the trailers were lies. All of them.
In fact, nearly every trailer leading up to the game's release teased cutscenes and mechanics that didn't make it into the final game. There were scenes such as the Dawn trailer that just didn't materialize in the game at all. These weren't all Versus 13 trailers. These were Final Fantasy 15 trailers. It's almost as if Square Enix just lied about the content of the game in every trailer.
Number 8. Noctus sleeping.
Originally, it was said that Noctus's dreams were powerful alternate realities and were going to provide flashbacks and insights. We see evidence of this still in the story in such things as Platinum Demo, where Noctus's dreams are literally creating this alternate reality. Carbuncle even said, "Somebody doesn't want you to wake up," and we still have no idea who that is till this day. He also dreams of the Omen trailer while in Lestalem, which we'll talk more about in a minute here. It remains unseen what the intent of Noctus's sleep could have been, other than sleeping in the crystal, and now it'll probably never be known.
Number 9. The Omen trailer makes no sense.
Nothing about the Omen trailer makes sense. Of course, I know it's an alternate timeline in which Noctus fails to become the King of Light, but there's so much about it that has no context whatsoever. For example, under what possible scenario in any timeline could it be set up where Noctus and Luna are forced to fight? Then there's this mysterious figure who says he's seen many deaths, but now he's only looking forward to one. We still have no idea who that person is at all. Bahamut? Arden? We just don't know. He will take the blame for it, as must we all. What does Noctus take the blame for? Who is Regis asking the gods forgiveness for? Then to make things more weird, Noctus dreams of the Omen trailer in the game, but it's never actually addressed in any fashion.
Number 10. Noctus and Regis flashbacks.
Easily one of the most disappointing things about the story to me. The relationship between the child and their parents is one of the strongest bonds we form as human beings. The development of Regis and Noctus' father and son relationship was consistently teased with all the trailers, and director Hajime Tabata said it would play a crucial role in the story, except we never got anything on it. At all. This is one of the most utterly disappointing things about the final game. Now it's time for those bonus things I promised. The first is the removal of the steampunk swords. Okay, so originally the Armiger swords were all these badass steampunk swords, and for whatever reason they were just removed with no explanation. Not a huge deal, but goddammit, I like steampunk. Double bonus, Noctus's eyes. They used to change color depending on his mood and the ability he was using, and now they only turn red when he summons. And I kind of lied because there's a triple bonus. Anyone else remember when the car radio was teased to actually give plot development about the world, and somehow this got changed in favor of putting radios across the world? I don't know how or why they decided this was a better idea, but that's what they went with. And one last honorable mention, did they seriously license Florence and the Machine for 3 songs and then only use 1 during the course of the game? Too Much Is Never Enough and I Will Be are 2 of the most incredible vocal tracks in the history of Final Fantasy, and they simply are left to go to waste. Rewatching old trailers just to make this video, it made me realize just how much of this game was completely lies about the plot. I understand that over the course of 10 years, game development changes a lot, but the amount of changes in this game was overall ridiculous, especially when it promised so many incredible things that I've always wanted to see in a Final Fantasy game. It's honestly just a shame. It's no wonder there are so many people clamoring for an alternative timeline that reboots the game. Not that it would ever realistically happen though. What was the most devastating story cut for you? Was it something on this list or something that I didn't even touch upon? Be sure to comment below on which story chains most devastated you. And if you're wondering who the awesome cosplayer in the thumbnail is, today's featured and incredibly talented cosplayer is Leo. You can find a link to their Instagram in the description below.